Blog Talk Radio.
He was talking about the image and the things that he would do. A selfless man who never thought about anybody else. He took on everybody else's pain. That's tortured soul. So I want to talk about managing grief and loss and, levels up, finding a way to manage grief and loss through levels of meditation and comfortability and duration of meditation and mindfulness, and also being present with that. And letting you guys understand that grief loss is not easy. It really does suck. And it does suck a lot about you because you're not thinking that you're going to end up losing somebody. And when somebody comes and dies, and you think about the what we call affirmations that you have to have in your mindset going through grief and suffering like that. I'm not for this, my case. I'll work through it. I won't be the same after this, but that's okay. I'm surrounded by strong support and a network of people who love me or care for me or have respect for me to understand that I am grief. My spirit is healing, although my heart is hurt. I won't hold back myself from the healing process and the grief process, although it may not be easy. I am who I am, and a part of that is I am grieving, but I am going to move towards healing and coping eventually. I see love all around me. And this is my grandma used to tell us, and this shall too pass. It's the same thing as they are different. Grief will pass and other emotions will come. Some days are going to be good, some days are going to be bad. But I am affirming that grief will pass and I'll get back to better days. It's just not right now. I can retain love and let go of all. I choose to get to a place of healing and coping with the loss. I am grateful. I am healing and I will be gentle with myself as I go through this grief process. I remain focused on my memory and hold on to the good things and the blessings that are in disguise. Now, people will say, what do you mean by that? People look at that as a way of, bringing up things, old brides and concerns of someone who's just celebrating their life. Or celebrating them and giving them their flowers and their transition. A lot of people don't know how to be what we call a Torah, or level layers of not vouchsafing or multiple layers of being cordial and understanding of the homegoing and a transition of life. Because even though you're going in the physical, but your spirit is going in moving, and it's going to take that time to passage. So why wouldn't you make that grief and that loss a little easier by celebrating someone's life instead of making snide remarks about someone's history or their life or their story? Unless you have something nice to say, don't say it at all. And this is why I thought it was amazing that a dining station on Taylor beginning sat there and said something about safety and trying to get kudos and accolades while trying to make DMX's death about them. I think everybody's done that in their lifetime, where they make somebody's death about them instead of homegoing and celebrating the life of the person at the funeral. And we all have that family member, or we've got that non-family member that makes it all about them. They're doing all this fall now, all this, this, and all this kind of stuff. I'm trying to make one sense so y'all can actually understand what we're saying at, what's the material. So in these affirmations, I remain focused on the memories and the blessings and ignore the extra stuff. So when we think about this, and we think about our past and cross again, it's just a divide for right now, but it'll be a hell of later when I meet you for real in the spiritual world. So with that being said, nothing will break bonds of love, even though you're not here. I will focus on the blessings of your life and continue to teach others about the blessings of your life and what you did to bless others' lives while you were here. Every life has a meaning. All this pain will heal. I am never alone. You are never alone. We're all grieving, but doing process grief in a better manner. So I want you guys to get the follow the grief process so that we could talk about that. Because everybody doesn't understand grief. Some people get busy when they're grieving. Okay? Everyone deals with grief. Just I want you guys to understand that. Because people will laugh, some people will cry, some people will visit themselves for work, and then others will even throw up or feel numb or feel some type of sick and upset. Some recover quickly and some do not. And then so that grief is a natural feeling. It's a natural level up. We've all been through it. I have gone through it. You've gone through it. We all have gone through it. Somewhere along the way, we've all lost somebody that's important. My dad, my granny, my adopted granny, I don't call her adopted granny, that's my granny, that's my dad. Although I have a real big dad, she's living. I still love her. But the thing is, I don't know her. But my granny's dad, my granny, like I told y'all, I still grieve over her today. But I'm coping with it better than I did at 19. And I want you guys to understand that. Because when we're thinking about the process and recovering quickly, it depends on the person and who they're losing. So I want you guys to understand the natural healing process, and there's no right way to do it. But there is a way to have the decorum and a level of passage of the body and passage of the person and passing them in a manner of, I'm going to make sure we celebrate your life. I'm not going to remind people of what happened in your life or things that you may have done bad. I'm going to focus on the good. I'm going to shed positive light on your life. I'm going to transition you from a level of physical to a level of eternal life, eternal or into heaven or wherever you're going. So, like I told you guys, it's no right way. But in our practice, in our rituals, going to funerals, the food, like I told you guys, when we go to the food, and you know how it is at the food, everybody wants to act up, everybody wants to bring up things, everybody wants to talk about things, everybody wants to talk about estates, everybody wants to talk about assets, but they don't want to talk about what was good about the person and what it benefits them. So when I tell you guys, we got to learn that grief is complicated. It's complicated because we don't know everything. And maybe that's good. But when it's our favorite that dies, a celebrity or someone, what you call a household name, and when they pass and their feelings, their levels of right to pass on to the next world as beyond the flesh and the physical to a level of eternal circle of life. And they basically complete the square, complete the circle of life, and now they're back at one. One's the man, twice the baby. So then you understand the transition of going back to the circle of life, and going back to where you came from, to be with God or whatever God you serve. So with that being said, for some people, grief can become too painful. If you wrote something differently, and it can become a level of anxiety, depression, or manifesting levels of health, where I want to talk about mental health, and I want to talk about behavioral health, and emotional health, and emotional healing. And other times things might be far too long and take over a person's life for years on end. I want you guys to understand it because it's happened to me. Because sometimes grief is so deep and grief is so long and so many pain, suffering, factors and variables in that grief or whatever caused that grief. And I want you guys to understand what I'm saying. When we're thinking about our grief, and I want you guys to text that 866-727-9323 or 404-418-544. That's why I text us on during the show, and I'll see it. Or you can call our after everything else. We'll get you guys to the After Dark show and everything else. You can walk by, and we'll be sitting on the phone and talking while we're doing our own live. Yeah. So when we're talking about levels of layers of grief and how we can get those layers of grief to understand what it is, grief can be complicated grief at that point. So when we explain normal grief varies greatly between cultures and people, and then on top of that, situations that are manifesting behind the grief. Then grief is a natural process, as I said, and does not have a linear way of treatment or being effective or being able to help it heal. And about different people absolutely become complicated in their grief and their grieving process because there may be layers of variables and factors that are affecting their grief and healing process, or they're coping with the loss. And then there's complicated grief that can be treated with psychotherapy and mental health intervention, or level of what we call behavioral health, or CBT, DBT, right, and all another type of therapy, personal emotive therapy, and being able to get to do the footwork and the groundwork of psychotherapy and the layers of that. And in this, I want you to understand that grief can really take it down to the point that it's poison. I can liken it to poisonous hair. I can liken it to a poisonous person. I can liken it to a poisonous husband or a poisonous friend or poisonous levels of hotness or poisonous levels of people who are just unethical, misconduct, abusive, and divisive. They can cause grief. And it's cause a war of morality, welfare, and recreation within an organization. So think about this in the sense of how that works and how people can end up in a level of stage grief and sometimes not getting out of that. Here's why. When we think about our grief, when we're thinking about acute grief, right, we have layers in between complicated grief and levels of what we call normal grieving. And we go from acute grief to integrated grief, and that's normal. But we've forgotten the two other layers of grief, which is complicated grief and integrated grief, but it's being impeded by situations. So let me break it down to you about acute grief. Immediately after loss and the month afterwards, it's normal to have an intense feeling of grief and upset, anger, or some type of layer of shock, distress, sadness, or appetite, or levels of trouble, sleeping, or poor concentration, or behavioral issues, or deficits from grief manifesting from loss. Be it whether it's a car accident or whether it's a poison, whether it's anything outside of a marriage falling apart or a red situation, being married to a narc or a sociopath and just finding that out, or being divorced from a narc and just finding out things 20, 30 years later, 15 years later, 10 years later. It causes a level of complicated grief and integrated grief, and they go hand in hand. So when we think about the normal grieving process, we go from acute grief, talks about the level of layers of complicated grief, which means acute, complicated, and integrated grief are hand in hand, synonymous with each other. And the symptoms slowly diminish through the passage of time, and that's acute grief. So it's kind of like adult stabilization. When somebody presents if they've been through level terrorism, domestic terrorism, or emotional abuse or torment, gaslighting, bullying, or any type of loss, they lose somebody in their family, and then they end up having a meltdown. It doesn't mean that they're nuts. It doesn't mean that there are any type of diagnoses. It means they're physically needing to be stabilized because something is unstable in what they call outside factors, or what they output their affected inputs, and the cognitive process of therapy of figuring out, okay, how do I deal with this from point A to point B, X, Y, Z, 3, 4, 6, 4. But when you get to grief stages, complicated grief, sometimes the symptoms of acute grief never go away. So you're ending up in people last for years or can last for 5 weeks. And then on top of that, a loss of a loved one continues to feel unreal, unimaginable. And that's when we're talking about coping mechanisms and things like that, and it becomes unmanageable. Then we think about what has to be done. Behavioral health, mental health therapy, sometimes intervention with a therapist, life coach, and things like that. Or if your life coach is actually a certified MSW, LSW, and being able to deal with different things, or a certified life coach to help you with the grief process and understand what acute, complicated, and integrated grief is. So with that being said, it helps you to understand so your process is better and know exactly what stage you're at, so you can begin to go into the rational emotive part of therapy, the RAT part of the therapy, not the cognitive part, but the rational emotive part, and then putting the seed in there, cognitively processing it through the brain, and that's psychotherapy aspect to that. So you got that pyramid of behavioral health, mental health, and then on top of that, therapies that go therapeutic, and then you have the pyramid top, the peak of the medical pyramid, of saying to yourself, is this acute grief, is this complicated grief, is this integrated grief, at the top peak of this, how do I move that grief down that flow through behavioral mental health, and then what treatments and treatment plans to psychotherapy are levels of what we call coaching or alignment or gap interim while you're going through levels of psychotherapy or what we call counseling on a higher level to diagnoses if you're developing levels of behavioral management issues or mental health issues from dealing with that type of loss and grieving. So once you guys understand that, and we can attach it to the integrated grief, which is after resolving most intense symptoms of acute or complicated grief, and getting into what you enter the line one stage of integrated grief and failure, not end up being triggered or upset from something else happening or a level of layer of serious unfortunate event. I want to explain to you guys in short word form to help you guys understand it. And then on top of I was like that with Wade. When Wade died and everything. So one of the thing is, I was able to integrate it, get to that acute grief, and then get the integrated grief, and learn how to cope and be resilient in that. Now, complicated grief would be an example of what I went through subsequently after Wade died, and things like that. And my life was like pretty much pretty good, and it was long until my life got altered egregiously based on other things that were happening overlapping that were waiting for my time. But now it's coming full circle, so I have a greater understanding of it. So I stopped grieving as badly, and I'm learning how to process my emotional health, my well-being, and things like that. Put myself here first, because there's no kind of it's in store for me in my life to move out of that and get to a journey of healing, resiliency, and coping with that grief and that loss that I felt before. But the complicated grief loss is a doozy. It's like it hits you so hard that it's like when you get knocked down, there's a whole level of I can't believe sex, or it knocks us off the feet because it may be our favorite. It might be a family member, or it might be our spouse, it might be our dating partner, it might be somebody that we grew up with, and then when it hits us, we're like, and we don't know what to do. Because you're like, what do you mean? So did what? They got who? And then when you think about, oh Lord, I got to go process this, then we got to think about, okay, here's those feelings, then we got to deal with people we haven't talked to in ages, and we don't know how they're going to act. So then you got to go look at that complication of that grief, and if there's any family layers, or if it's non-family, you're dealing with somebody you don't, or you don't know, or you've been around somebody who knew someone, then you're talking about levels of layers of what can happen, will happen in that grieving process, because it's not linear. That's why. And then what requires treatment, because you're going to see people's true colors raw down. And I want people to understand that. I'm not trying to say it's the right way, but that's the only way it's without saying pushing a date to become this work. So I'm trying to do this in an appropriate manner, special manner, so that you guys understand that the integrated grief becomes a little layer. At that point, you come to accept the reality of the law, but you resume your daily life activities, but sometimes you're not resuming the same shit. Nothing is the same at that point. Then you think about it, doesn't mean that you miss your loved one any less, but if you can get to a point of integrated grief and not end up in complicated grief, which is where you yearn for this disease, or very built about the idea of moving on. And a lot of people don't understand what I mean by taking that L like that. When you take a full win, okay, and you end up with an L, like it's an L shape, right? And it's moved at a table, right? So when you put another L here, you got a whole level of when you win, you win. When you lose, you win. And it's like 3 times 2, and you're thinking to yourself, what am I going to do? What am I going to do with all this loss? Whether it's financial, whether it's physical, whether it's mental. And then on top of that, you're dealing with other outside factors that affect you in the grieving process. So that's the grieving process that's going on. But when we talk about stage 3, we have to talk about a sense of denial. And the things that people usually go into is how Dr. Cheever lost the model of grief. I want to explain it in that sense so that you guys understand it from a psychotherapy and psychiatry point of view, and then from the life coach, how to process this in a short order form so you guys understand that. In the description of the primary response to the loss is, are we going to take L, or are we going to make this a win in this, or am I going to go to a level of, I'm going to take this journey, but I'm still taking losses, but I'm getting anything from it? Am I not getting some winning points here in the affirmations of, I don't want to try to heal from this loss, although it's not painful. I don't want to stay following in self-pity. I don't want to stay in that moment, and I don't want to stay in that feeling of, I've had a loss and I don't think I can function. We've all been there. We've all been knocked off our feet, and we had to get ourselves back up. And then we've all went through that denial state. And I want you guys to understand why it's important. Because when you're in denial, you do that. Then you get to the anger stage. Then you get to the bargaining stage. And then you get to depression, acceptance. And then on top of that, someone who is going through or might be going through that in the stage in that or might be going through it in all different other orders of how it's done. So didn't I tell you that everything has an order of life, everything has a circle of life? So when we think about that eternal circle of life, we're thinking about the orders of our life, and we're all going in order. We all have our most limited minor. We think about our denial. And I told you guys about the stuff ourselves, and then what we were programmed with at birth. So we go and get away from all that while we're growing up in our experience. So I'm trying to make sure I don't sleep, and I was like, I don't want to sound like sleep. Jeez. Yeah. And so with that being said, y'all got to sleep for those topics. So when we think about our denial, and we're thinking about lovable layers of this can't be happening, digital layers to accept the fact that something happened. Or the fact that it occurred. And in watching the children, TV, and I'm going to have a project to that with them. A lot of people don't understand that grief can go in stages of lovable layers of, I can't believe that this person passed away. No way. And I can't believe it happened. Like, tell me that's not true. So you're sitting in a state of shock and denial because it's like you want that person to come back and there's no way for it to come back. But for your mind to process that, all your remember that initial shock, to move past that, yeah, a professional has to step in, or someone has to step in and let you know, or support system, or your smart team, or your family has to let you know. You know, and then that's where you get into that anger, the crying, the bargaining, and the depression that may manifest from it. Levels of anxiety that on the seriousness of the loss. And then how the phone can may intervene in that and become your support system because there's a level layer sometimes some deaths actually hit us like this. Like, they're just like, how, right? The kids are just like, hey, you know? So that's where you go to get to that anger phase. Why is this happening to me? Why is this happening to us? Why is this happening to our family? And we want to ear fight with God. You know what I'm saying? And I want you guys to understand it from that point of view, that we've all been there. We've all been at that point where we just literally want to curse God because we were just like, you know what? Beep, I can't believe such and such. How this happened? Beep, why did you take this person? Why couldn't you take so and so? Beep. You know, all that kind of stuff that we all have said and done and read the process. So when we think about anger, when an individual realizes that the losses occur, they become angry at themselves and at others, and they begin to lash out. They may argue or become argumentative or become combative. And especially if it's a deep loss or something like a medina or a level layer of planning, of blame going on somebody that you love and love dearly or respect so much, and then when they die, then you're ready to fight the whole world because God took somebody from you. And when I say God took somebody from you, if your hours don't know your numbers going to get called. So you have to live your life to the fullest, go within a level you can, order your step back your tongue, and walk through your of serendipity and peace be still sometimes. Because sometimes you realize that the situation is unfair and you want to place the blame on somebody. You want somebody else to pay for the fact that someone's body you're hurting. And when I talk to what I said, it's the most awesome, God-awful feeling to have. It's that when you're bargaining. That bargaining stage is like seeing a auction or something. You know what I'm saying? So you're bargaining, so do anything to change this. Can I get a $5 for this to change? Can I get a $10 for this to change? Can I get $100? You know what I'm saying? So when you're thinking about this, and thinking about how to do anything to change this, it's just like that auction list, right? So when you're sitting up there, you're trying to reach that area to go say, I'll take it. You know, okay, can I have another? You know what I'm saying? So when you're thinking about this, you're bargaining with God to bring back somebody you can't physically bring back. So you're literally telling God, I'll give you $100. So, you know what I'm saying? So when we're talking about level bargaining, that's what happens in that instance. The bargaining of the individual trying to change or delay the law or delay the process of grief. So with that, for example, we might try to convince a partner to return after a breakup or search for a likely cure a case of terminal illness or disease and things like that. So those are things that tend to happen when somebody dies. We want to go and beg the person with God and bargain with God. Like, can I give you $100 to do that person here? Can I give you $1,000? Can I give you $1 million? Can I give you $5? Can I give you $10? You know, and you're at that point where you're hoping that they're going to say, oh, I'll take it. You know what I'm saying? But at this point, God's not like that. We know that God is an awesome God and a higher learning, a higher being, and an anointed, gifted, prophetic level of being that we don't get to see, but we know He or She's there. So when we think about this, God is a God being. So in that, we can't argue with God when somebody leaves us. And it's easier said than done because I've been through grief so much. I'm birthday, or if it was necessary for them to pass away, or if God took them out there because he saw fit, or maybe there's something that God puts on your way that he didn't die behind the same person, or same people or individuals or adults, adolescents or adults, then you have to come to that stage as if. And then you think about that, you'll change your mind from I'll do anything to change something that I'll do anything to accept it, I'll do anything to get hope and get back to normal as best I can to learn to heal and resiliency. Because sometimes you will not heal from it, especially if somebody loves, and that you'll learn how to cope with it and become more resilient in that, in the factors of trying to find a way to get back to yourself. It's kind of like dealing with somebody who's possible mind with the heart death crazy. You tamper my heart death, it's not supposed to do. But you don't tamper somebody's heart death in their computer. And you don't do this to multiple devices and then expect somebody to say, oh, I'm sorry. So when we have people who are willing to do those devices, demonic nasty out, we were trying to do that folks who respond in that manner, then we're talking about a little later. That's different. You have to learn how to cope with that people violate your personal right to business and your personal right to integrity to its entirety, but there being some rights involved. And the thing is, the same thing with death. You have to think about levels of depression that from all that, because you're not believing that somebody's slimy or official that did IT hacks, things like that, or Victoria, or other people who do things like that. So any of that's kind of like an example. But the example will be if they mentioned mom died, or Randy's mother or sister died, or brother died, all in a car crash or something like that, then you would have that person that's bargaining out doing anything to change it. But have the same energy you have with your temper by things by belonging. I'm not calling that into existence. I'm giving you a prime example of how that can go hand in hand with somebody violating you and messing your whole day's business stuff, or looking at gaslighting all these you can act out of character, which you normally don't act like that. Or love players of smarmy, nasty husband when you're divorcing and playing all these crazy provoking gaslight devices, emotionally abusive things, and then you're saying, you got to mess up and that anger process. So you all have seen me in the anger process. You all have seen me in that process of being angry, upset. You got me messed up and cuss back to family, but turn around and tell you not to cuss. Because I know it's wrong. And that's not my character, because I don't like to cuss. I really used to cuss until I'm around people who like represent stuff. And I used to say, Daddy, you're absolutely right. And I cuss more than anybody else. I put $1 in the jar. I mean, 5,546 cuss words already. But me and my daughter have laughed about it. Because she's in grief like me. And I want you to understand adolescent grief. It goes through non-sexual depression and acceptance of what has happened. And I will tell you, my wounded warrior actually helped me. My wounded warrior saw me go through some things in 2012 that nobody in the right mind would do to someone else, let alone buy the child to participate and do all the grief as well as those damages that affect me. And my child was just, my baby went from being a happy-go-lucky little girl to being angry, withdrawn, and upset all the time. There's times when she would take it out of me. Well, she's like, at least you care about my feelings, and I'm sorry. And she's funny, she's like, I'm sorry. And she's like, I know it's wrong, but I'm just so mad. So what I took it upon myself in 2017 is to have text messages. You know, there's words, conversations with her, and then we go, and that's how we all those TED talks about grief, and allowed me to be able to understand her, and allowed me to get into her mindset and begin to sit down as her first counselor, as her first life coach, as her first chauffeur, ATM, chauffeur, taxi, nurse, lawyer, MD, moms, and officers, and single moms, single dads, and check on the mom, and then I have a mayor for her. So you understand that I have to be a sapphire, a whole mom and one, and be the father and the mother. So, and I love it as a mother to be the mother, and, you know, I want to take on the role of being dad, too, as a disciplinarian and also confidant and nurturer. But it happens. So when the child has the layers of love and trauma, they would see their mother be traumatized, being angry about that, realizing how far it went, and then realizing after the fact that it changed her. We had these TED talks about okay. I was sat down and talked about it so that she could get better. And plus, on top of that, I realized it was out of my league. our mental health, it's their mental health, or things that cause us grief that can cause mental health deficit that we weren't born with, or we did have deficits from the get-go, and they reduced against me. There's a level of grief. So when we're talking about my daughter, it's the same analogy with the teenagers I left a young adult. And when I tell you that it's been a hard journey with my daughter, and it's from the time she's 7 years old all the way up to now, and when I tell you how hard it was to realize that it wasn't my fault because it took my little light of mine to shed light on me and say, Mommy, it's not your fault. Mommy, you didn't do anything, and you didn't deserve half what you've gone through. It's not your fault. Don't beat yourself up, Mommy. You got to talk. You know, and have the balance of days, they shed the light, and they help you towards a guiding light to be able to understand yourself and understand them more. So I got to take the student seat, and my daughter was the teacher who shouts out to Jazzy. Because when I think about it, if she had just said, Mommy, you don't talk to us. And Mommy, what's wrong? Oh, she's talking to me. I'm your daughter. Did you think I would love you? I wanted to remind you I love you. I wanted to remind you I will always love you no matter what. And I hope I never made you feel like I wasn't there for you. I hope I never made you feel like you could talk to me. And for her to say that, and for me to turn around and I apologize to her, she's like, why do you apologize for you? Do anything? But I said, I want to apologize on behalf of all the adults that owe you an apology for your grieving. And us having this check allows us to have a little bit of understanding of what the grief process is. Because when we think about depression, when we think about anxiety and other mental health disorders, things like that happen, or levels of situational depression, or environmental depression, or levels and layers of severe, what we call not being integrated grief, but complicated grief from it. So when we think about the stages of depression, and the individual has come across recognize that the loss has occurred and will occur further with the level of abuse, having to process levels of what you're going to do about probate, wills, all these types of different things, and even think about your death. This is why I always tell you guys life insurance policies. And it's okay about getting death and indemnity policy. Here's the reason why. And I'm going to tell you guys something. I used to process insurance claims. And that was one of my first tips off for mutual loss. And I learned the business of insurance, indemnity, health, life, and all those different things. And I was taught by one of the best about all these types of insurance, disability insurance, and all of that, and levels and layers of annuities and things like that. So we're talking about 440, 240 licenses and things like that. So let's make long story short. I wanted you guys to understand that when people do not prepare for death, you end up leaving family with debt, probate, and having to deal with assets and having to divide it up fairly among everybody. And this is the part of grief where depression can set in. A person doesn't have their affairs in order before their death, where somebody drops like this. Their affairs may either not have been in order or nobody thought they were going to die. So when you have that level where, that's why I gave kudos to some people who actually deserve those kudos, whether I feel like being personal, it was a professional level of being humble enough to say kudos to you guys. That family is at a loss. There's a lot of things that have to be rectified and balanced out. And this person just dropped like a fly, and we didn't know. That doesn't happen. So when that happens, we all are taken aback like, you know, at that moment, it's almost like, who else is going to check? You know, and are you guys prepared for that? And then when it's your favorite, like I said, with music and people who are influenced or household names, when your favorite passes away, it does something to you, especially if you grew up with that music. That think about this on a stability level and being a non-celebrity. What about life insurance? What about health insurance? What about seeing your doctor? What about getting the most maintenance things that you're supposed to have at a certain point in your life? Here's why. If you are in your late 20s, up to getting into your 30s, into your mid-30s, up to your 40s, you should be already trying to prepare for Social Security, and also your benefits should be already paid with some credit there. That's what happened with me, is that I had credit bills out there for work for the time I was 19. I had more than enough credit, and when I became disabled, I was able to do so. But let me tell you something. Do you think I want to be disabled? Do you think that I want to be at birth? Do you think I want to have from birth have been born damaged? Do you think that I wanted that? I just knew how to accept the level of Asperger's syndrome high functioning. And, you know, I've had this conversation with my mother. I've had this conversation with my sister, you know, and they accept me as an addict. They never let me fall behind, even though it's past orders. And then on top of that, I don't break too beautiful. So at that point, they let me excel, and I was gifted. So not only was I super smart, but my IQ was high, and then on top of that, it was extremely high. So not only did I test gifted, but I supposed to go gifted magnet tools for that. So I suffered since then a traumatic brain injury. My IQ dropped from 16 points from where it's at. So that means I still have superior intelligence. It does not mean that I'm better than anybody. It just means that I'm working on a traumatic brain injury, and all the different things that happened to me, and it made me a little bit baby. Yeah, I said it. Baby. And let me tell you something. When you realize that your elevator is not going all the way up to the top of the stairs, then sometimes you have to go and get the help that you need. And part of mine was some traumatic injury. Combat, getting hit on the head, going and hitting the floor, lost handling of me when I was being terrorized, for both gaslit, intimate partner violence. But that grief, the grief that came from it is 10 years out. Whereas the event happened 10 years ago, and the event happened over 12 years ago of laughing, and 15 years total, off and on dating people, and multi-level that keep players in all of this, and the layers of grief that happened. Think about how I had to make that analysis with my daughter. And when I had to sit down with her and her doctor and things like that, when I said, you're going to happen. Like, oh, what? Why do I need it? Because you're angry about that for you. I've been there. I know what it feels like to feel by yourself and you can't talk to anybody. I know what it feels like for people to listen to respond and to listen to understand or properly treat. So I want to give you the platform to give you kudos for teaching me that I need to talk more. But I need to give you a level layer of understanding about what happened because you didn't know. You didn't know half of what was going on. You only heard when I was getting hurt. You only heard when I was getting hit. You only heard when somebody was being verbally abusive. You thought I was going to die. That did something to you. So in that acknowledgement and apology I gave to my daughter, I reminded that you don't have to apologize, you didn't do anything. I said, well, it's not that I didn't do anything, it's the fact that nobody ever apologized to you and you need to hear that apology. Let me tell you something. Ever since then, it has really helped her out. She went from being angry and upset to processing her grief better, and she's with this facility, people like I am, and doing the program. She's also doing the program as a young adult. Sandy is my wounded warrior. I want to tell you how amazing that little girl is. Now, y'all heard me drag her through heck and back. But I'm dealing with teenagers. And it is not back season when it comes to being with a teenager. And when you're raising a millennial, it's totally different, right? So you know how it is when your teenager wants to clap back and you're like, you're ready to annoy your teenager, right? So as a mother, I have to take off my clinician hat, my paraprofessional hat, and I have to be a mother. And I want to be a mother on top of that. So when I'm ready to clap back, please don't on her and tell her, look, beep, beep, you got me messed up, beep, 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 beep. I had to realize where it was coming from. Okay? I want you guys to understand that grief can really affect children just as much as it can affect adults. And then on top of depression that leads into a level of other comorbidities, whole levels of anxiety, panic attacks, and things like that, or disorders from levels of near-death experiences, being poisoned, provoked, gaslit, humiliated, tormented, all those different things. So going it back to a death or sudden death, or you have multiple deaths in your family, and then you're just like, okay, who's next? You become so numb, feeling it hours later. Once you get to that moment of pure, unadulterated level of hurt, that will literally cause you a little layer because you're sitting up there thinking, I can't believe this happened. I can't believe that this literally altered my life. You're sitting in a place of why is this happening to me, and you're said that the grief and suffering part of all of that is a level and layer of how come and why. And just like the who, what, when, where, why, when you're asking for questions, how did this happen, when did this happen, why did this happen, and you get stuck in why. And then why is it happening to me? And a lot of times we live in here tonight. Until we recognize that there is a law. So that leads to radical acceptance. It's going to be okay. But it's like that song, baby, it's going to be okay. At that moment when you're thinking about that soulful, beautiful voice, not any other voice that tell you, baby, it's going to be okay now. In the beginning, it's not okay, and you don't want to hear somebody say, finally, you'll come to accept that loss. You don't want it to be final because it means that you have to put the final nail in the coffin. Situation logically, and you look emotionally come to terms with the loss and how it happened and with the situation at large. And in there, I want to break it down in each step on top of the grieving process so you can understand how people get stuck in one of those periods. Then let's talk about childhood grief. As adults, we learn to speak about death through ages of infants, okay? And through hope. Loved ones may pass on or at rest or worse like the dead. Okay? Feels too blunt and painful. So when we talk to children, however, we have not yet learned how to put this code into a format that allows a child to understand that there's a loss without hurting them. So when a child experiences a real-life loss while a parent is living versus a child experiencing loss while a parent is passed, deceased, or passed on, or honestly, with kids about death because it's a taboo subject, so we made it taboo, just like we made mental health taboo. And even though it should, nobody wants to be the poster child for mental health. But when I tell you I took it as a level of something I want to do, as a life coach, wellness coach, health coach, divorce coach, and wellness coach, and relationship coach, business coach, and mentor, a lot of people get affected in their business, their personal life, their professional life, their marital life. And then on top of that, this week online is also the children, and this day and age with advanced children who see things online before we can get to them and talk to them. It's a level layer of bridging the gap and knowledge of how to fill in those gaps and begin to use the level layer of understanding about talking to children about death. And then on top of that, talking to children about grief. And I'm going to give you guys some pointers about this. Allowing kids to feel comfortable about bringing up their feelings about death is another layer and level of giving them permission to talk about it. And to ask the questions and express the feelings. That's a short way to say it. They don't force the conversation, but have a conversation when the child is ready. And then teaching children about death. Let me tell you something. I've been taught about death so much, to where when it happens, I'm like, okay. All right. Many kids don't understand that death is permanent. They might wonder how the deceased will eat or drink. They may wonder if the deceased feels any pain. If you have to explain to a person that a person dies, their body stops working, and they're no longer, but children might need a little bit of a reminder this person will die. That's when you go into levels of grief and what we call the other stages and whatnot, and figuring out how that child's going to cope with that. And avoiding using euphemisms for death until you get them acclimated that someone has died, or the terminology that passed away. But when you say things such as he's passed, or she's passed, or he's gone, or she's gone, or we lost her, that's not telling them exactly what happened. You have to say that, oh, so-and-so, Uncle Buck died, or Auntie Buck died, or, Auntie Mary died, or Auntie Bill died, or Uncle Bill died. You have to be able to say, hey, he passed away, but this is what it means. Or, hey, she passed away, this is what it means. Think about, we want for someone to not have to search for that person because kids are innocent. That person is going to say, when are they coming back? They just lost them? So you mean they lost my teddy bear? Or they lost my jewelry? Or it's not like somebody stole my jewelry like I did, but it's a difference when I lost a piece of jewelry and I can't find it. I'm here to get that jewelry back. It's the same thing with the person who died. You don't want to say, oh, we lost them. It should have been that child not registering. Oh, we lost them. Well, you think about this part for my babies, you don't want that the children think that the person coming back to these says they're gone, they're just gone, gone. So children might need reminders that the person will not return. Then you move into a level of giving accurate information about how a person died without giving too much information. Talking to a child with a discourse and decorum that does not cause traumatic scars or relevant layers of misunderstanding. And then add relevant depth of how they died, or they were very sick, or they died in a car accident, or there was a frightening level of traumatic event that happened. You may not want to discuss that with the child, but you have to say, so-and-so passed away, but their death was not a good way to go out here. Therefore, that person has died and has now passed away. So when they ask the question, how did they die, then you have to figure out, well, I'm going to tell this child enough information to let them know that they died, but not how they died until that on a later date. Because you can tell a child, hey, I don't think it's good for you to hear how they died until a little later, maybe when you're a little older, and you can cope better with this. But right now, we just need to process the death, and let's get through that part, and I'm here for you, and I love you. Okay? That way, you're shielding a child from the level layer of what they think, oh, so got shot in their head, blown off their body. See how that sounds? Or somebody had a bad car accident, got flying up in the car. You think you definitely tell somebody, okay, get that? You want to be able to save your child's mental health, emotional health, and not have nightmares or be frightened about death. And then on top of that, a child should become concerned about their family's own safety. And then on top of that, the death particularly related to a level of caregiver, as say a grandmother or mother or father or sibling or somebody like that, or uncle or aunt. You're talking about a level of layers that they're really close to that person like that. There is a level layer of having a little decorum. And I'll say, well, Auntie so-and-so just dropped dead, and then Auntie so-and-so just had a car accident or fire, blown the smithereens. You can tell them that. They're going to say, hey, Auntie so-and-so or Uncle so-and-so passed away. They have died. And that's what that means. What do you mean? Are they coming back? You know, when kids say, what do you mean they're coming back? No, maybe they're not coming back. Auntie or Uncle so-and-so or you know, if it's your mom or dad, you know, anybody, if it's your grandparents, if it's anybody that has passed away, a lady, you have to say, lady, don't come back. And I just want you to understand that I'm here for you, and we're going to take it one day at a time. Just remember you got to live as you die. And with that being said, once the man twice the baby, once the woman twice the baby, you live and you die. So that's a nice way of particularly saying that death and a nice context that does not end up leaving an emotional scar for the child. And you reassure children that they're safe and will always be careful by an adult. And what people don't understand is you've got to be able to say, hey, so-and-so passed away, but go in here, or my little sunshine, so-and-so passed away, but I'm here. Here's my hand. You want to take my hand right now? You want to hug? You know, something to make that child feel better. Because at first, when they finally realize they're not going back, that's when you see the child acting up. That's when you see the grief. That's when you see them acting just like grown-ups do. When they get to throwing things and upset or they're grieving so bad and they take it out on someone. I had that situation when I was with someone and living with them. It was 1 year out of his mother passed away. I went from having an awesome young man in my life to a man that turned into 7. To the level of grief that he was going through, he's taking it out on me. He never ever let that day in his life. He was always out quiet. He didn't notice it. But the grief process is later. And I realized he changed a lot. So when we think about guidelines for caregivers, caregivers don't understand that even if you're caring for an adult or an adolescent young adult or a small child, you have to remember his choices. Use activities and rituals to remember that person who died. So let's go over those first 2 points. Giving choices when death creates chaos, or having choices to restore a child's sense of control or comfort level. For example, involving a child in planning of the memorial services and then choosing how to participate in the memorial services helps the child to understand life and death in the full circle of life, like the Lion King. When you thought about Scar Mufasa, and you think about the Lion King, how the dad died, and then full circle, how Mufasa learned how to become a king. And then you think think about the level of layers of the baby who was a cub and went and grew from a small lion cub to a great king of the jungle. But it took a level layer of the circle of life and those that were support guarding and things like that through the activities. So using activities and rituals to remember the person who died. So I told you everything has a ritual. We get up every day and drink our coffee, correct? That's a ritual. We get up and read our morning newspaper. That's a ritual. We go to church. That's a ritual. We go and sit there in our cultures of our neighborhoods, our cultura, our culture, and we sit there with our people just like we do our church stuff. When we do our funeral procession play, our pallbearers, our funeral home directors. So we're talking about a level of rites of passage or rituals that we do for that person to pass on to the next everlasting. Okay? So this means taking the person's favorite meal, painting a picture or a shrine or writing in a journal or anything meaningful that will help a person to transition and that passage away to the next life, the afterlife, or anything meaningful that will remember that person's memory, heart, any of that. So when we think about all these different things, we're thinking about the children, even if they're adults. There's a level layer of performing a rite has a ritual. A few is basically saying, we're going to celebrate your life. We're not going to talk about anything bad about you, but we're going to celebrate yourself. We're going to celebrate your life. Because we were taught this from me and grandpa. And, you know, it's like my mom is my biggest sister, and my granny was the OG of this thing. When Granny passed away, my Jesus passed away. And they had kids. And when we all came together for the funeral, and we decided we were going to put together a long for our Granny, my big mama, we made sure that Granny had that funeral right. So you make sure that that ritual, that rite of passage, and that levels up will pass you from the physical and the flesh to the spiritual world. That is the ritual. But we all do rituals every day, just so you know. I just want you guys to understand. People get used to the idea that it's ritualistic to have people. It's ritualistic to go to church and pray for that person's body, their spirit to pass on to this afterlife. So with that being said, we have to empathize with the child's grief or adult's grief. We have to say that there's no right or wrong way to grieve unless it's grossly negatively affecting our outcome of our life. And then on top of that, it's to feel after death. Are we going to continue to live? Or are we going to mourn every day, all day, until we can get back to normal? Or are we going to find a way to figure out if our grieving is egregious grieving or is a little layer of integrated grief or acute grief to integrate it instead of being complicated grief stages cycle? So some kids initially seem fine or even relieved, but later on express sadness, upset, and pain. And no one should be shamed for how they feel. So it's the same thing with adults. We can grieve from a divorce or a bad breakup, or we can grieve from a level of sudden death. We can grieve from a sudden death identity, our life, our lifestyle, the things that we had before a person has passed away. So with that being said, sometimes you'll see the real knowledge of people when people pass. So with that being said, we have to maintain a sense of normalcy and whatever possible and get a level of layer structure. And then on top of that, in your rituals of that structure, finding a way to enlist a level of coping mechanisms so your morning rituals, your daily routine doesn't get thrown off and things can be alive, thriving as that person is passing to the afterlife. And as you perform as a funeral for that person's life and celebrate, not cry, but celebrate them. So you practice a level of self-care, which is another thing that's technique to do. Because when you think about this, your own ability to cope is then on a level of resiliency and factors of processing the grief appropriately. So take your children see that you're upset, angry, or crying. However, intense displays of emotion or which can be scary for children, you have to learn how to process the grief appropriately. So I want you guys to understand how that relates in correlation to the things that I've been through. There are times where I just let my daughters give me cry. It took me 8 years to cry. 8 full long years after 12 years, 15 years overlapping, and 10 years overlapping. And it reached its harm essentially for a number of years. And then I found out the reason why. That was grief on me on another layer. It was like having a ton of bricks on me, and I was like, I can't even breathe. I felt like somebody was constantly knocking the wind out of me and going, it kicked me right there. And it was like, it became a little layer of let me make sure my child's mentally okay, and let me be able to work with my child, and if I'm going to talk about myself. But I didn't realize that my child saw the level of grief. It's like mom is so strong, but you don't have to be strong all the time. And it was out the mouth of base that she's like, Mom, I heard you. I heard you be yelled at. I heard the things that happened to you. And I hate that it happened to you. You don't have to apologize to me. But when I tell you this full circle story, I want you guys to understand how the mouth of base that my baby sat there and said, I'm here. And, let's do this together. And I said, let's do this together. And we went and we did our therapy. And she's doing pretty good. She's in advanced placement classes. She's doing really well. And you would think that she would be psychologically worse off than what she had, but she's a resilient, smart person, and she's trying so hard to piece her life back together again. And I'm helping her do that. But we had to have a conversation part. And then on top of that, taking image of what it was the layers of suicide prevention. I've never been suicidal a day in my life, although people try to find me and do kind of messed up stuff at the local police department, and I had to get that straightened out, so I think part of that. I'm not suicidal, I'm not suicidal tendencies. Never tried to kill myself or harm myself. It's where I had a bad accident, father and the mother, Tisha, that knew what happened, and she just now sat there and told on herself just this year. And it really just later made me go through the roof over it, because I was like, this Tisha and her husband are the reason why this happened. Sat here playing my face at the 11th hour of all this and all these years, and you know that you did this, your husband did this, your son did this. And then there's levels of multi-perpetrators that it crossed a level of what we call more than awkward and levels of grief and depression and upset situation depression and anxiety from dealing with that. And when my doctors were like, you're only PTSD risk and Asperger's syndrome, and they told me this in 2016, and it was like, okay, but that's what's in my records, but they haven't documented as something different. And that they said things about Asperger's at the time I was born, but they didn't have studies later on that they know that is Asperger's confirmed. Although I'm Asperger's doesn't mean I'm not any less gifted. I am gifted. When we're talking about a little bit of suicide prevention, we're talking about children, just like adults. Anybody can get suicidal. It does not mean that we need to laugh at people when they say, I want to be out of here, or I'm feeling the type of way. And that moment, it's a powerful emotional reaction to the death of a loved one. It's appropriate to seek professional help. It's appropriate to seek a specialist. It's appropriate to have intimate react. And someone sit back and actually, after you told them what's going on, that they realize, hey, this is what's going on, something else. So when that happened to me with my daughter, I wanted to give you guys an example of how resilient I had to be. How resilient I had to be was the foundation of bricks that was thrown at me and the each brick. I put a whole level of each one that built a pyramid of eternal circle, a level of not missing my mark in the healthy side of my third eye here. And saying to myself that I'm going to get back to my true self, my true police self, my I am self, and get back to the real me. But the real me is lost in the sauce of what happened. The real me that lost in translation of everything that happened. The real me, guys, to right along with the events that happened. So with that, I grieve the loss of my identity. Doing what versus who I am. This person that I am now is a whole different person from the person I was. And I have built a little layer of strength and resiliency so that I can get to a point that I will be able to heal one day, just not right now, but I'm able to cope enough so I can function. And that with the help of those layers of the doctors and things like that, so that I can be present for my clients, has aided me in abilities to do what I do now and function at a high capacity. I want to share with you guys these things as a life coach, health coach, and then going on to get my PhD in forensic psychiatry psychology. I fell through the cracks and things like that over time. It tries to so many different variables and layers to what happened, to where a specialist would have had to go and do all the forensic work, just like my new specialist has done for me. And then on top of that, I read a book that the body remembers, and my specialist was beginning to sit there and understand it. And then my specialist did something amazing. He actually facilitated throwing the lady underneath the bus and doing something because we had an actual telehealth appointment. So the technician got caught in her antics because he said Nisha wants to play games and whatnot, but she got caught. And it's unimportant that she did it. So not only did she sit there and get Nisha, but she thought it was funny to sit there and beat that diagnosis that I don't have. And the doctor already knows because it's stating right there in my record that I have trauma PTSD for what happened. And then on top of that, I'm answered to be documented by my therapist out there in 2016 when I went through the most egregious levels of law. So while the TV shows playing about a diagnosis that's not there anymore or anything like that, because it's misdiagnosed and they then updated the files, then the doctors actually helped me. And then they were like, you know what, we're not going to go with these stuff because this is a egregious mess. So I didn't realize what my doctor did. He did reverse psychology. He knew I was going to react with his but I kind of figured out what he did after that. The TV show repeated, but I talked to my doctor and my phone out the point. So it means that my ex-doctor wired his house and lost me, and anyway, that's my whole needs business. And not only did he play psychology, there's a little layer of he crossed the line to come back from, and I should say the grace help you for a day survive. But with that being said, it took a elite team of doctors that I got assigned to because there's a level layer, there's failures where I went through the fact. There are people who shouldn't be a doctor right now because they didn't do their job, didn't ask the right pointed questions. But they were quick to go and make me feel like the bad person, or the person who was damaging me told me exactly where the shot I was at. That was just something there was a level layer like, oh, wait a minute. How did you know where I got dragged to? Because you're the one who started this, and what I told everybody was true, that you said that you were going to ruin my life, and you subsequently did, but you also went to other places that people unrelated to. But you knew it was a good choice. So when I tell you as a life coach, wellness coach, health coach, divorce coach, and as well as a marriage coach, and how it grossly negatively affected my business model, it was a level of grief so deep than me that I'm a strong person that I had to seek professional help. I had to advocate for myself and say, I don't want to go through the fact. So with that being said, as a life coach, wellness coach, you're going on for apprenticeship to become an MD, forensic psychiatrist, psychologist, ME, medical examiner. It's going to take a lot to undo the damage that happened to me, but to undo my daughter's damage the way that I have and her specialist have, and me advocating for my daughter taught me that it's important to always stand up for what you believe in, stand up for your rights. But then on top of that, also make sure you have the right specialists and therapists or life coaches, wellness coaches, or parent professionals to help you to heal so you get to a place of feeling later, but coping for right now while you're going through the journey and transition of the process. So with that being said, you know, you think about the Kate Spade, Anthony Bedouin who died from suicide. You would think that they're the happiest people in the world, but they took us out of here. So it's never funny to poke fun at somebody who is suicidal. It is not funny to poke fun at somebody who is a cutter. I'm not a cutter, I'm not suicidal. I'm just telling you that predecessors to suicide is heading predecessors to a level of suicide attempt or a level of mentioning things over a period of time and eventually doing. So a lot of you people who are kicking issues, kicking catchers, or torment gas after both bully and harass people, you know, strong discussion gets to the point saying, I'm about here. I don't want to be here. But for me, I never want to not be here. I want to be here, and I want to live because I have a greater calling in my life, and I have a greater level of anointing that's on my life, and I have a greater calling in what I'm trying to do with my life as a life coach, wellness coach, health coach, divorce coach, as well as a marriage counselor and a business coach as well. So in my paradigm of coaching and paradigm of life and paradigm of understanding that and breakthroughs, I want everybody to understand what it is for child guidelines from Teen World, thought online for children, adolescents, young adults, but also for young adults and middle-aged people, and also people who are older stage degrees, who have lost someone near and dear to them. So it's hard. So I want you guys to understand that process and being able to work that out and understanding that it's very important to turn through and decide. Because if you don't, you will become a person who will not grow. You'll become a shadow of your former self, and it'll take a lot for you to get back activated to who you are and versus who you were to who I am. And you'll never get back who you were, but you have to go to a point of fix those the degree of I am, the degree psychology word of I am, eliminated one. So I wanted you guys to understand all of that. And then on top of that, finding what the effects of laws and things like that, because you lose yourself and you lose the level and layer of who you are in order to get that breathe back into a level of control and understanding of your life. So sometimes a care professional is what you have to go to. So with that, no matter what emotions sense of experience. And now that you are being supported in all of that, I want you guys to understand that you are safe to be able to express yourself when you put your appointments with me. So you can go online, attach that love offering and things like that for $IRCC coaching, Diva coaching, email online, and Talk Radio, which has $sign in the front with Talk Radio, Diva CC, and more. And I want you guys to understand you have to deep breaths. And I'm going to show you. You breathe. You got to be able to breathe. You got to be able to meditate. And then you have to think about the levels of psychotherapy and psychoeducation, legal education, sociological education of how to breathe properly and effectively, so you won't end up in a place of loss of bereavement, and then you go down this rabbit hole of not having your life in control, or others will be trying to control the narrative of how you're supposed to breathe. And I want you guys to understand there's different types of grief, and the normal grief reactions and things like that. So we're going to go over that, and we're going to go over those levels of how you have to understand it and bereavement and supplemental levels of understanding of that. And then on top of that, the levels and layers of how that morphs to the definition of anticipatory grief, normal grief, complicated grief, or chronic grief, or levels and layers. So I want you guys to understand all of that and the characteristics and definitions. But we've been on here an hour, 17 minutes, 40 seconds, a little longer than what I thought I was going to be on here for. But I want to talk about all this before we get into the grief process and being able to understand it and to be able to understand it rightly, so we can get into the nitty-gritty of loss and bereavement and finding ways to cope for all types of bereavement and at levels of delayed grief or chronic grief, or what we call levels of layers of trauma, PTSD, or levels of anticipatory grief that you know something's going to happen, but you got to have a support there for you. So with that being said, I want you guys to understand the complicated grief process, and then you have to understand the type of grief that follows grief, and then on top of that, levels and layers of understanding all that and us breaking it down piece by piece, and then getting back into digging those showers, we've made flowers, and lots of breakthroughs in all of that. So I wanted to thank you guys for coming to my seminar and my live about this, and so that you guys understand that grief is not linear, and grief and loss is not just one person. It is a whole group effort and a whole level of support system on and offline and environmental, so that the grief and passing process or the ritual of the celebration of life goes on without hitch, without major levels of colossal calamity or drama or things like that. So with that being said, I hope you guys liked the presentation on that, and hopefully you'll get a good understanding of it. So when we go into our resiliency, coping and resiliency course tomorrow and talking about grief, that we'll go piggyback off of that, and then we're going to go back into a little bit of self-love after the next couple of days. I just want to make sure that I got everything good for you guys, and then we're going to read the book that I wrote. And then understanding death and dying, and then preparation for death and dying, and coping with bad loss and things like that. And then injuries can take to a level of loss and grief and things like that. So we're going to have a level layer of talking about what to do and how to make a comfort kit. And then on top of that, how to know when you're grieving, how to know when past the point of grieving, the trauma, and upset, and things like that. Like, I had to recognize it and realize it's okay to get through it. Because it takes so long, you're going to leave bad to where I'm like, you know what? I'm waking up, keep writing. I'm waking up, stressed out, angry, upset, and it was bad, and I wasn't able to sleep until after being next to somebody who had some calm and energy, and she would let me sleep next to them, put his arms around me, and I would fall asleep because I felt safe to my life. Then I literally didn't feel safe anymore. I literally didn't feel emotionally safe, environmentally safe, and I didn't feel like what they call a level of stability in my life, because my life would go up and down, topsy-turvy, and it was just I walked down, all around, up, down, all around, to the point it's like, I don't know if I'm going to survive another day of it. And once you get into survival mode, and you forget to breathe, then it's just delayed breathe, like I told you. So with that being said, we're going to talk about creating those comfort lists, the things, and then on top of that, comfort kits, and then on top of that, find a way to do it familial, non-familial, and then be a support team for everybody on and offline, especially just like the example of DMX passing, heart, loving death. A level of, I hate to say that, no pun intended, but a level of love and respect for this man, and the level of layers of loss that his family must be feeling, and those that want to desecrate his memory, so celebrating and literally celebrating his life is amazing. A level of achievement in life outside of things that he has So in that, I wanted to do this on a positive note. So let's talk about something cool. People go through a lot of problems in life, okay? Some of us find it easy to go through those problems. Maybe we have greater higher calling and ability to be what we call stronger than most people or survival is fittest. But something that's of great support is understanding that feeling any individual experience and being able to understand someone from a depth of perception instead of a depth of, oh, you should be breathing like this, will help a lot of us become more emotionally intelligent. And then what many people are evading breathing and things like that are experiencing, it's not okay to avoid breathing. Sometimes the best thing you can do is breathe to make a breakthrough and have the sun shine in, and then turn a circle of light and all seeing eye of what you need to do to grow from it and lighten yourself and begin to shed some light on your breathing process and then move forward in your journey and take it one day at a time. So I hope that helps you. I understand grief is a normal feeling. But with something for someone is lost, you feel it hit the space of your heart, mind, body, soul, and spirit. But just don't find yourself in tears or upset or angry. But if you get past that and start processing it properly, you'll find a lot of resilience and coping mechanisms to get you a place